Okay, the pressure's on, Bob. I'm about to wax this intro. You guys ready? Welcome back to another episode of the Elevation Association Experience Podcast. We're your guests, Dr. Jared Hill, Dr. Dan Nelson, and special, and I do mean special guests, Mr. Ryan Passy. I'm pretty sure I just killed that intro. That was
Yep.
a 10 out of
Except
10.
Except you said we are your guests, not your hosts.
Damn it.
Almost.
Next time. Yeah,
Missed it
so
by-
close. One
missed
of
it
these
by-
times. Well, we are your guests. I mean, we're guests in your car, or in your, wherever you're listening to this. The 8 people that are listening to this, we're a guest in your world now. So I didn't mess it up. I really nailed it. If you think about it and twist it and change it. Jared doesn't agree. All right.
What are we talking about today?
I don't know. Not this. Okay. So, well, I think today we got to talk about last week, right? Like, we can't go and have the event that we had in Dominica for our International Couples Summit 2026 and not talk about what happened, because it was so impactful. So it's actually the reason why we've got Ryan on. I mean, we can randomly just pull Ryan on, but he is here for specifically, we got to give him some kudos for what he masterminded out there and created for us, and what we were able to implement during this fantastic week we had in Dominica. So we're going to talk about what we call a life map, and we'll talk about like why it was such a significant component of what we were doing at our summit. So I'm really pumped to be talking about this. This is something that I think it brought more than a few of us to tears just talking about this stuff. So super impactful.
Yeah, it's all about the summit. Kind of turned into a summit about being intentional. About living, about designing your life, which is it's a design your life summit. We had some incredible speakers give some great presentations. We talked a lot about the most dangerous thing in dentistry, which is success without direction. So we talked about that and why that's a problem. Success without direction is just, it's just speed going in a direction. And if you don't design or choose which direction it is, it's probably the wrong direction. So we centered this whole week around an opportunity or an activity called the life map. So, and this was something that Ryan designed and came up with. And so Ryan, I'll let you kind of go into this, talking about the life map. What it is, what your thoughts were behind it, and why you thought it'd be so important for the members of Elevation Association.
Before you jump into that, Ryan, Jared, you just said something that I think warrants some discussion, because on the surface, it I think maybe doesn't resonate until you stop and give it credence. And that's that you said that that there's a lot of danger in having success without direction, where I think a lot of times success is the endpoint for people. They're like, oh, well, I'm successful in business. I'm successful in my practice. So first, why is it dangerous? So why I think, because this is the lead up for Ryan to talk about the life map and why we have to have direction, but why, delve into that a little bit more. Why is that such a dangerous thing? And you said you don't have direction, but I think that's the cart and the horse, right? Because people are like, oh, if I have direction, then that will lead me to success, and then I've made it.
Well, I think what it is, if you have success, in the traditional sense of the definition of success, especially in dentistry, in our profession, there are external markers of traditional success. Making more money, producing more, growing, getting bigger, acquiring the next practice, hiring the next member, hiring the associate. There's this traditional pathway of success, right? But if you think about it, we talk a lot about climbing and choosing the peak that you're going to. Well, success is, a lot of people spend their lives like climbing a mountain, and you can get to the top of a mountain, and that's success. But the last thing you want to do is go 20 years or 30 years and climb a mountain, and you get to the top and realize it's not even the view you really wanted, right? So it's important to pick that mountain top and decide this is actually the direction I want to go. Because if you end up going one way and you're climbing, and everyone's saying, "Good job, you're doing great. Oh my gosh, look at him. He's doing amazing. He's climbing, he's getting to the top, he's gonna hit." And 25 years later, you hit the top and you're like, "Yeah, I did it. I'm at the top." And then you look over and you're like, "Actually, I want to be over there." Like, I'm not even in the in general direction where I want to be, but everybody's telling you you're achieving the success. And along the way, there's people that may be like, "Hey, are you sure you're on the right path? Are you sure you're on that trail?" And you're like, "Ah, look at me. I look how far I've come. I've come all the way up this mountain." And if you never decide what mountain it is, then you're that's the dangerous. See, the danger about dentistry is it is a successful business, right? You can grow, you can get more money, you can produce, you can become, rich, whatever that means to you. But there's a lot of people who at the end of their, or towards the end, or halfway through their career realize, man, this isn't even the direction that I want to be going down or towards. Then that's hard. Then you got to backtrack. You got to unravel all that, and work your way back. And so that's what I mean by success is the most dangerous thing in dentistry. Is success makes you ambivalent, right, to the things around you. It makes you arrogant, right? Like, I don't need to, I'm good. Like, I'm cruising, I've got success, right? It makes you all these things that I mean, I don't need to stop and evaluate where I'm on a trajectory of success.
I think that the other side of that too, Jared, is that there's a lot of uh podcasts, information out there. There's a little bit of not a ton of studies, but there's certainly a lot of empirical evidence and support of the fact that when people put so much, you have this ambitious person and they drive towards their financial success, their business success, whatever, and they leave some of the other things on the wayside, that by the time that they hit whatever pinnacle or peak they're trying to get to, um, they look around and they see things that they've sacrificed along the way or left along the way, and it feels hollow and empty, and that their lives are hollow and empty because the only thing they have is money in a bank account or whatever, but they haven't. I love that the dentist advisor is talking about living a rich life, and it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you have millions in the bank. It means what is a rich life, a life enriched, that, and that gets lost sometimes along the way. And so I think, yeah, this is the perfect segue to go back to the question to you, Ryan, about, with all that in mind, how'd you come up with this, man? Like, what was the thought process? How did you get here? What motivated you?
So I think a lot of this came from um, the focus that we have on an Elevation Association of Life, Leadership, and Legacy. And over the past couple of years, we've created some really cool tools around the leadership component. Like, we've gotten very good at implementing EOS into businesses traction, and to a level where, when we first started, it was like, oh, you guys, need to have a BHAG, or you guys, need to have a 10-year vision. You guys need to come up with some core values. And over the past, 2 or 3 years, the three of us have done, I think, a fantastic job of being able to have dentists come and not just hear like, you need to have a BHAG or you need to have core values, but we've come up with tools that allow us to help them walk through that process, right? So the concept behind the life map was similar. It's like, how do we provide that same amount of value for people who are coming to one of our summits? How can we give them not like, oh, you need to go home and be intentional, right? Like, you need to go home and figure out which mountain you want to climb, and you need to get there. So they go away with like, I need to do something, but they don't know what to do, right? So the concept of the life map kind of came from like building these tools for the leadership component. Like, in our master class outfitters course now, dentists come here for a weekend, and when they leave with a 10-year vision, They leave with a marketing plan, who their ideal patient is. They leave with their core values in place. They leave with an accountability chart for their practice. They leave with like, not like you need to go home and do this. They leave with an actual, plan to go back and do this. For years we've been talking about you need a life plan, you need a leadership plan, you need a legacy plan. And so for me, it just comes from this um, focus that the three of us have had over the past few years of like providing tools for people to come up with those life, leadership, and legacy plans. And so that was really kind of I think the driving motivator behind the life map is how do we provide a legacy plan for people coming to the summit? And again, not like come and you need to go back and, figure your stuff out. Is like, how do we help walk them through the process and give them something meaningful and personalized for them to then go back and have a map moving forward, because we're all on this journey of life. And really what we wanted to provide was a tool to be like, okay, this is what the journey looks like. And how do you become intentional about moving forward? Life's precious, life's short. And then how do we provide, our attendees some value, so that when they go home, they have that thing. And the life map turned out great. It's a personalized document. Most of them are around 40 pages that are personalized to each individual. So when they go back, it's like, a great tool for everybody on living life intentionally, I think so.
That
So
was
that's
two
kind of how it came about. So
Yeah, there was two big things that kind of emerged from discussion from all of this, and I think that there was several of them, but two of the things that stand out in my mind right away was the word that you just used right there, Ryan, was intentional. You know what I mean? We should be living life with intention, just not drifting around. And then the second thing was alignment. We heard alignment over and over and over again, right? Like that was another thing that came about. Um, so this isn't really it's not a, how is this different than like sitting and trying to plan out your whole life? Like is that what this is, Ryan? To explain to, someone that's like interested in maybe looking into this, is this something that like you just are like, oh, well, here's this point in my life and we're going to do this at this year. And in this year, we're going to do this. And in 2020, 2028, we're going to have a vacation to Disneyland. And is that what this is? Is this that the kind of map you're talking about?
no, it's a little more, in depth and detailed than that. And a lot of it comes based off of some, different information that the three of us kind of brought to the table on what makes a healthy, happy life. And a lot of the research was backed on, when I went to um, nutrition school and that they talked a lot about what was called primary foods, um, because you you can eat healthy all day, but if your relationships suck, if your physical activity's poor, if you don't have purpose and meaning in your life, if you don't have spirituality or some kind of an inner life, like yeah, your health's going to suffer, right? Life's not going to be what you want it to be. And so um, part of the core components of this life map isn't just like um, how do you survive a week or a decade, but it's like how do you take those things of health, happiness, purpose, spirituality, what does that look like for you in your life? And then how do you be intentional about living your best life? I mean, when we started the exercise, I mean, Jared did a little um, visual test, or visual um, component to the life mapping that I thought that had a lot of impact on me when we were first talking about this. And that was the 1 through 100, right? Where you're looking at like 100 years, if you were to live to be a centenarian. And then we kind of went through those meaningful, what are some meaningful milestones that you've lived through? Where are you currently at in your life? And for me, I'm, 53 years old. So, I took and tore those numbers at 53. And then, he talked about like the average lifespan of a man in the United States is 77. So here I am with 53 to 77. And then he says the average health span of a man in the United States is now 67. So I've got, 14 years sitting there in my little hand of potential health span left in my life. And so I think that was super meaningful of like, look, life's precious, life's short. Statistically, this is like what you have remaining in good health. And then it's like, how do we add years to this? And then how do we add health to this, right? This remaining years that you have in your life. Because again, like that was for me, when you're looking at like, okay, I've lived 53 and I've got 14 good years left, that was pretty almost emotional for me to go through that and be like, wow, I've really got to be intentional. I'm at a point in my life. The takeaway for me was like every decision matters at this point, right? Like everything I eat, everything I do, the choices I make up every day. Like I don't have time for like a do-over at this point. Like I can't, like in my 20s, you could get by with some of that stuff, right? You could be a little lazy about being intentional. You could be, I've got time, but time slips away. Like, and that was the thing about the life map was like, if you're not intentional, you're going to drift.
Right.
You're just going to kind of, like Jared said, you're climbing a peak. Well, one day you wake up and you're on the wrong peak. I thought you were telling my life story there for a minute. Like I spent 25 years on the wrong mountain and had all sorts of success there. But, in the end, it was like, I'm not even on the right peak, right? Like and the peak's gone. So what do you do now? You got to start all over with a new peak and a new destination. But that was like, for me, that visual thing of like, time is precious. Time is going by fast. And if I'm not intentional about what I want to do moving forward, I'm going to wake up 10 years from now and, who knows where I'm going to be or if I'm going to be happy with the life, you've created. So,
Yeah, I think that this was a for all of us that did it, I think it really served as a wake-up call, right? It was a huge wake-up call because you get a look at like, oh my gosh, like I only have this much time. I've got this much time with my kids. This is what's gonna happen, as the years progress, as the decades go by. And I think, Jared, you've got probably I mean, you've spoken about this a bit about really the wake up call you had and where you flipped your life kind of on its head in a couple ways. I think you did it. I think you've been a great example to show, physically how you've done it. You did it, professionally, but maybe speak a little bit like what I mean, we had this life map as a wake up call. You kind of had your own wake up call, but how was the life map? Since you've had your wake up call, now you're doing bodybuilding, you're in training right now, you're in prep right now for a show. How was someone that's already had the wake up call? How was this impactful for you as you're moving forward?
Yeah, at some point in time, if you don't write your life plan for you, the world will write it. They'll write it for you. If you don't write your own, the world's going to write it for you. Meaning, they're going to determine your schedule. Your life map really it aligns. You talk about alignment, right? It aligns your schedule, your calendar, like Ryan said, your last, whatever 15, 20, 30 years, with your purpose, right? With your values. And so for me, it was like, I was to the point where I was like, oh man, I was finally taking some vacations here and there, but as I would go on vacation, I would get hurt. Like my back would hurt. I would be out. And I was like, I gotta change this, man. Like I'm going in the wrong direction. And so I started, intentionally designing what I was going to eat, my workouts. I got a coach. I tried to do it by myself several times, as everybody always does, but it never works unless you have, someone help you design the program and somebody to be accountable towards, somebody to be like, hey, how's it going? Checking up on you. at that point in time, it's interesting when talking about Ryan's talking about, I only have so much time left. It's the same thing as when you're prepping for a show, right? You're like, all right.
Sure.
And you're thinking, I'm 12 weeks out, right? 3 months, right? That may seem like a long time, but if you think about it, if you do in your workouts, you do shoulders once a week, you're only going to lift your shoulders 12 more times before the workout or before the show. I mean, and it's like, oh man, when you put it into that perspective, it changes the way that you eat. It changes the way that you sleep. It changes the way that you work out. Everything becomes more meaningful when you put it all into perspective. It turns your life map takes your vague ideas or hopes. If we say, "Oh, I'm going to do this in the future," and it makes it into deliberate steps. Okay, this is how much time I have. This is what I need to do. It doesn't make your life any easier. It just makes it more meaningful. And so, yeah, physically I did it. In my practice, I did it. I was by all means successful, super busy, right? I was busy, busy, busy. I was booked out. I would everything the consultants tell you to do. I was doing it right, but I was dying. I was so frustrated, and I was ready to get out. And so I intentionally redesigned my practice and my life, and it's a current, a work in progress. You're constantly redesigning and figuring out kind of what the next thing is, but you're doing it now intentionally rather than waiting 20, 25 years. I think what's interesting in dentistry is the generations before us had different opportunities, meaning they grew up in a different generation. They grew up in a generation where they didn't know how long they were going to live. Like for them to live to 62 and then retire was a good gig. For us, we have so many more options and so much more potential that for us, the design of our practice doesn't have to be what our dads had. Not, my dad wasn't a dentist, but our mentors it can be a different practice. You can design it however you want to design it, but you have to be deliberate in the do it, and it takes courage to do something, maybe to do something a little bit different than what's been done in the past. It forces you to ask the question, right? Your life map forces you to ask the question, what do I want my life to stand for, right? Not just in my practice, but with my family, my relationships with my wife, with my kids, people around me. And the life map gives you insight into what that decade could look like. It doesn't predict the future, but it's going to say, you know, when you're in your 50s, 55 to 65, when you're in that decade, there's a good chance that Preston's doing this, Cordella's doing this, Sasha's doing this, and that this is what your life could look like. And then some of you did a good job of saying this is not predicting the future, because if you don't like that, what that looks like, it's better to see it now and say, okay, what decisions do I need to make now, and so I can make that look like what I want to look like. But that's the power of the life map, is it says if you continue on this path, and it's based upon the input that you put in it. This is what you could have, maybe a couple grandchildren. You could be, at this stage in your practice, and that gives you power then to make deliberate decisions now, instead of living with regrets when you're 60 or 65 or 70.
Dude, yeah. So I have to tell you, just barely, I just got pinged. I'm not going to say I won't share what he said, but this life mapping has been so impactful. One of our attendees just shot me a text talking about, he's like, and the very first thing he says is, I got to get vulnerable here. I haven't done this in a long time. And he starts to share some feelings and some thoughts that he's had from that jumping off point, just from the summit that we had. And, and I think, Jared, what you're talking about is so poignant. I think that this was something that was pretty special. Obviously, I think that you were really good at recognizing the need to pivot and make changes early on. And earlier than most, right? And but for those who, maybe are drifting a little bit, maybe don't have the intention, this really this really helps a ton. And I want to like, I thank you for talking about how it's kind of broken up because we haven't really, we're not going to get into the details of how these are broken up, but you made mention of how like it talks about our decades, right? This isn't a planner. So just to be clear, it's not, this isn't like, we don't sit down and like plan your life. It's not that kind of map, right? And I'm going to share something from mine just to kind of to illustrate what's cool about this. So, you know, this is right out of mine, and this is ages 55 to 65. I'm 48. I'll be 49 in a couple of months. So this is coming up, and it says that this age is the bridge to freedom. It says it's grandparenthood and purposeful contribution. And it starts off talking about how that the age 55 to 65 for me is functions as a bridge, right? Um, and I love this sentence. The expectation of this decade is discernment with permission, right? And it says you're no longer asking what you're capable of doing, you're deciding what is worth doing. And just as importantly, what no longer, excuse me, the danger of this decade is subtle. Continue to live as though life must still be deferred, postponing joy and freedom out of habit rather than necessity. Um, and that's a big thing, I think, for a lot of us where, you know, we're like, we'll do this when, right? How often do you hear that? And so that's kind of wanted why one of the reasons I wanted you to share your experiences, Jared, is, you know, the can gets kicked down the road, right? How many people do we talk to, you know, that are like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. Oh, I need to do that. Yeah, I'll eventually going to get to that. I'm going to, and that can gets kicked down the road forever, you know, and before somebody knows it, like you said, they're on the wrong peak. They're not where they thought they were going to be. And then and this was a huge component, Ryan, that you worked into this that I love. And that's that they physically, and you alluded to it as well, Jared, you couldn't even go on vacation without your back hurting. You're just being in pain, but they end up at a point where now you're physically unable to do the things that you always wanted to do. You know, I'm going to take up surfing when, you know, I'm going to do this when, rather than going, oh, I'm actually going to get purposeful and you know, screw it. I'm booking that surfing camp this year. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to sit down and make it happen because now I have this map that is a wake up call and it's like, oh my gosh, like my health is, you know, when I'm 75 is not the time to go out and be learning how to surf or horseback ride or whatever the crap it is that you want to go and do, right? And I love that, Ryan, that you worked that into that, and that was something that was a big component of this, right? And something that you're pretty passionate, you know, you, Jared, are all three of us are pretty passionate about, but you were to the point where, you know, you kind of had your own wake up call and went to school. So talk a little bit about why you wanted that to work into the map.
Well, I think the important part of the maps or one thing is like, you know, longevity, which is like how long can I live? And the other thing is that health span, right? How can I stay healthy and live a full, fulfilling, functional life for as long as possible? And I think that's super important because you don't want to, you know, degrade over time. It's like, how can I maintain my health for as long as possible? And what does that look like over the long term? And again, I think one of the important things about this life map is like, you know, docs will sometimes do a good job of like planning the business or working on a business plan, those kind of things. But it's like stepping away and like, well, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my, you know, these things that are probably more precious to us than the business, you know, relationships with my family. What kind of a grandfather do I want to be? What kind of a father do I want to be? What kind of a husband or wife or, you know, what do I need to be doing in my relationships? And how do I live the best life possible? And I think just incorporating, you know, we talk about the marginal decade in here, which is, you know, that last 10 years of your life. And how do you want that to look? Do you want to like be in a wheelchair and hooked up to oxygen for those 10 years? Or do you want to be like, you know, out hiking and doing the things you love, surfing, whatever it might be, maybe now that older ages, but how long can you do the things you love and and live a life that, and then maybe your decline's only a year or two before you exit. But that's part of the purpose. Just like, how do I plan and how do I live intentionally now to protect, those things moving forward, and so that can maximize, um, and live the best life possible. So
Yeah, I've had a quote that I've carried with me my whole life. I learned it when I was a teenager, and it's when I die, I want to go like my grandfather, peacefully in my sleep, not like the screaming passengers in my car.
yeah,
Or in
yeah,
his car. I ruined
His-
it again. Oh, see,
yeah,
this is what I'm talking. So those who weren't at the summit, I have a gift for murdering quotes. It's a special gift, it was on full display just then. But you get the point. Yeah, and I think that that's a huge deal, right? Like, there's a lot of the National Institute of Health talks about what needs to be done if you want to have that last decade of your life sucky, or do you want it to be full and rich and be able to like live it, and that's a big deal that we don't really think about a lot. We don't like thinking about the end, but there is the reality that life is finite, and there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do it, and I think that that's the other can that gets kicked down the road, right? Is we take for granted when we are young and healthy, and then we don't do the things that set us up for success. And that was a big part, I know, Ryan, that you were like, hey, we got to set ourselves up for success down the road.
right. And each little decade's got, again, a little thing on health span. What does that look like in the decade? What, things do you need to be focused on? Like, I'll just read a little bit from my 70 to 80th decade, right? So it says this decade is about independence and stability. Priorities are clear: maintaining muscle mass, balance, mobility, cardiovascular capacity, and fall prevention. The goal is not peak performance. The goal is dependability, right? Like, and so it's just a nice reminder as my life moves forward, where does my health thing need to be focused, right? Um, it's not killing myself in the gym anymore at that age. It's like, how do I maintain what you've built over the years, and then how do you, you know, live for a healthy, the next couple decades, right? So I think it's fantastic to have that health span lens in there. And again, that's going to change as you age over time. And that's kind of the cool thing of this life map is it's like, each decade you've kind of got those reminders of like, what's health going to look like in this decade, and where does my focus need to be, you know, maintaining what I've got, mobility, cardiovascular capacity, make sure I don't have a bad fall when I get older, those kind of things. What things help prevent that, right?
I think what I love about this life map is that when you build a house, you have a blueprint. You have a guide. You're gonna make changes along the way. You're always gonna make changes here and there, but you got a blueprint of kind of where you want to end up. Now whether you add an ice machine or whatever along the way, you add those things and or take away some things. Maybe you don't have space for the home gym or whatever, but you got a blueprint. The same as with your practice. You have a blueprint for your practice. You've got a practice plan that you put together. As far as you go over KPIs, you go over goals. Like you said, 10-year, 3-year, 1 year. This is what I want to look like. But rarely do we have a blueprint for our life. For some reason, like drift is like the default setting for everybody, and that seems to be okay, right? Like instead of making direction an actual decision. And I think that's where we make a mistake. Like your life deserves a blueprint, just like everything else you work on. The problem is we didn't know where to find that blueprint, right? There really isn't a lot of great tools out there for creating that blueprint. And this is why I think this is so valuable that we put together for you guys this is a questionnaire you go and you fill out, you enter in as much information, you make it as detailed as you can, and then and then we can put this together for you, and this gives you a blueprint. Now you're going to make some changes here and there, and that's totally fine, but at least it's going to give you the direction that your life deserves, right? It's going to help you create the life you want. That doesn't appear, you know, by accident. It appears by design.
Yeah, I love that, Jared. I think that uh drift is the default setting, dude. I freaking love that. That is I'm like feeling guilty over here as you're talking about it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I've done that more than once. And I mean, if you look back at my life probably looks more structured in some way on paper than a lot of people's just because I was in the military. I had a lot of things that were already kind of structured out for me. Right. The reality is like a lot of times I was just riding whatever wave I was on. And it was, you know, um, so yeah, I feel a little bit sheepish, that you're talking about. I'm like, oh man, I've let that happen a lot. But also like I've had some really great examples around me that have shown, the importance of being, intentional. And I've seen, unfortunately, I've had some deaths around me. My mother-in-law passed away when she was only 59. um, and sadly, both my brother-in-laws have passed away very young. And that's always a wake-up call. I keep talking about these wake-up calls, and so hopefully that's what, if someone's listening to this, that they take away is that like, hey, let this be your wake-up call, that it's time to swing things around, live intentionally, and get aligned. And one of the things about alignment that I really liked within the life map is it talks a lot about relationships and the relationships in each decade, right? One of the things that we did, that I was just super happy with the outcome is that we ran the life map through what was called the Gottman lens. So John and Julie Gottman, for those who aren't familiar with who they are, they're the pinnacle of relationship therapy. They're psychologists. They run the Gottman Institute, and they've done these huge, long, longitudinal studies on relationships and interactions, and so they can predict whether a relationship is going to work. They have a 90% accuracy to be able to predict whether or not a relationship's going to work. So we ran this thing through that filter, and I love some of the things that it gave as far as like what should we be paying attention to as far as approaching our relationships with our kids, with our spouse, what that looks like in each decade, because it changes as your kids get older. This is a trip for me. Every time we do our BHAG, our 10-year goal, it trips me out because the way that I look at that is I take my youngest and I go, how old will she be in 10 years? And it weirds me out. She just turned 17. She'll be 27 years old in 10 years. So that's the lens that I look at it with. And then I have this life map that I go and look at and go, holy crap, in 10 years, when I'm 59 years old, what does that decade look? And how does my relationship with each one of my kids change? Well, I'll probably have grandkids by then. My kids will probably be married. It totally changes my perspective, where it's real easy just to look at things through the perspective that we have today. Right. And so that shift of perspective has been so helpful. And then there's every one of these decades gives us a decision filter. And I'm just going to share this decision filter off of that same decade I shared earlier. And it says, as choices arise, the guiding question of this decade becomes, am I postponing joy, connection, or freedom for a future season that has already arrived? So it goes back to that thought, like, hey, I don't want to push things. For me, I don't want to push things down the road, right? It's time to do some cool stuff. When I hit this decade, don't wait. It's go time, baby. That's what I'm taking from this. And it says, if the answer is yes, the decision deserves reconsideration. So I like that a lot. So there's so many cool things that come out of this. And I think that starts to beg the question, well, if I'm listening to this and I'm like, oh, I want a life map, like, how does that work? Because I mean, we had to do it in the setting of a summit, right? We were just talking about this before we did the podcast. And certainly it's something that we feel is important, and it's an offering we want to have. But if I'm interested in this, guys, like, what's the plan of action? I mean, what do I need to do? Do I just reach out? Like, where do I go from here? If I'm sitting here listening to all this, what's the next step for me?
Ryan, you're the mastermind behind this.
That's a great
How's
question.
how does it get
It's a
put
loaded
together?
question because it's a lead in on, I mean, we're about to, we don't have anything in place, right? So there is the answer, I think, in my mind, I'll answer my own dumb question, is contact us. Let's talk about it. I think we've talked about doing a couple summit, where we bring some people in and we build something for this. But certainly, if you guys are interested in learning more about this life map, contact us, reach out to us, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about what goes into it and what it takes to do this, because this is not an easy thing just to walk into. It's an easy test to take, but it takes some time to go through it, right, guys? I mean, that was one of the things that we've probably walked away with the most, was like, this is something that needs to be shared and discussed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was it was fun to go through after, as a group, and go through the life maps together a little bit and share, interesting components from the life map as we kind of delved into it. But yeah, and I think they got better and better and better. And I think moving forward, these will continue to get better and better and better as we, you know, continue to develop this tool for people. I think there's a ton of um, stuff that can really make these next level and continue to provide a lot of value for people. So yeah, we'd love to get together on a weekend with some docs and significant others to do something like we do with the outfitter scores. But yeah, if you're interested in learning more about a life map or getting one, if you missed the summit and would like to have this, I met with Chad and Joe Wednesday, and we got talking about the summit and what we did at the summit. We got onto the
Chad and Joe Hammerstrom, from Best for Dentistry.
yeah, so we got on the subject of life maps, and they stayed home because they had a funeral, couldn't come to Dominica, and they were just so bummed that they missed out on, like, that's exactly what we needed. We missed this and it was life changing, and man, we're not going to miss the next one. So, but again, we're happy to look at how we can provide you guys with this information. So,
Any other thoughts before we sign off on this, guys?
No, I just love it. It's a great exercise. Yeah, like you guys said, just contact us. We can help you walk you through the exercise, and just help you gain some clarity on what this is going to look like. And we love to do this. Reach out on our website, reach out to us on school, however you need to, text us, whatever. Yeah, looking forward to talking again to you guys next week.
Cool. Awesome. Well, like elevationassociation.com. You can check us out at school.com, elevation association at school.com. Was it school.com/elevation association. I just murdered that. I'm on a roll today and killing stuff. But we're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram. So, you can always just email us to elevationassociation@gmail.com. We're happy to talk. And if you have any interest in this, hopefully you do. It is so impactful, so meaningful. And we would love to discuss ways that this can be incorporated into your life, and the ways that it can help you out. So, yeah, awesome, guys. Appreciate the discussion, and we'll see everybody next week. Cheers.
Adios.